Chapter 1. Northern part of the continent. The decades-long fierce battle between all races and the demon race has reached its end. In the demon lord's palace built of obsidian, Apophis, with black hair, red eyes, and two horns on her head, stands there emitting an aura of fear that terrifies all creatures. She sits silently on her crimson throne, watching ahead. A girl with silver hair and golden eyes, holding a long sword, kneels on the ground. Her armor was badly damaged, and blood covered half of her face, giving her a very miserable appearance. Just like the countless times before, the powerful demon lord has once again defeated the strongest individual in this world, the goddess. Now this goddess is at her mercy, to play with, humiliate, and torture, both mentally and physically, giving her the greatest blow. But Apophis does not do so. Goddesses do not die. Even if she is reduced to ashes, she will be reborn at some point, leading an army to once again attack the demon lord's castle. This has happened many times already. Similarly, even if the goddess is dismembered and thrown into the human coalition, it will not have a good deterrent effect, because everyone knows she will not truly die. The booming sounds of explosions come from outside, and cracks begin to appear on the solid palace walls. She doesn't need to go out to know that a tide-like army, with the assistance of countless race powerhouses, has entered the demon lord's city, the demon lord's palace, and will soon enter this great hall. The alliance is about to win. Apophis stands up from her throne with a calm yet resolute posture, approaches the goddess, looking directly at this subordinate who has been captured by her numerous times, and says in a decisive tone, "The demon race will never be enslaved." Despite having the most powerful demon lord in history, the demon race is still weaker than humans and the alliance in terms of overall strength. Knights, mages, and holy men and women all have great power. It was only with the support of the demon lord that the situation was barely balanced. In recent years, a technique known as fighting energy and mana has been developed by humans, allowing ordinary human soldiers to fight against individual members of the demon race. The demon army was completely defeated, and the demon lord was helpless. Apophis knows well that the alliance coalition will soon take her head, capture all the demon kings, imprison them, reduce the demon civilians to slaves, and force them to toil day and night, struggling at the edge of life and death. Just like what humans have done to the demon race after their victories in history. No matter how many times, I will rise again. Bang! The great doors of the palace were shattered and blasted away, as the alliance experts gathered together, armed with long swords, staffs, crosses, and other weapons, ready to hack the red-eyed, black-haired demon lord to death. But when they felt the energy fluctuations concentrated in Apophis's hands, they all stopped in their tracks, their faces showing expressions of horror. The ultimate forbidden spell. It's the ultimate forbidden spell that costs the life of the demon lord. The defeat was already certain. Even if all the experts here were killed, it would not stop the advance of the alliance coalition. But at least the demon lord must not be captured. She must not become a prisoner. She would die here in a grand and defiant way, proclaiming to the world that the demon race will never give up resistance. Of course, she will not truly die. If even the goddess can master the art of reincarnation, how could the demon lord not know it? In a few years, decades, or even centuries, she will be reborn and rescue the demon race from their oppressed fate. "You guys go quickly." The silver-haired goddess struggled to stand up and waved her hand at her follower. "I'll hold her off." "Okay." Hearing this, those people didn't stay a moment longer and disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving the goddess behind like a discarded pawn. Seeing this, the demon lord couldn't help but show a look of disdain on her face. "Is this what your followers are like?" Apophis said. "Cowardly, selfish, and disgusting." There's no helping it. They don't have the art of reincarnation. Once they die, they will really die. The goddess stared straight at the demon lord, her gaze gradually moving to her face. To be honest, Apophis, should I hate you now? Ahem. The demon lord held the destructive energy in her palm and looked over with a somewhat puzzled gaze. Think about the previous times after you defeated me. You chained me with iron chains, bound me with a collar, and locked me in a dark cell without seeing the light of day. But you never touched me. Not only did you not touch me, you didn't let anyone else touch me either. For a while, I thought you were a pervert. Apophis was completely unable to understand the logic of the other party. Why should I touch you? Why should a demon lord touch a goddess? Because I think I'm pretty good looking, Tilda, the goddess explained. Think about it. After capturing someone who claims to represent justice, what would a normal person do? Surely they would first do this, then that, thoroughly exploit and humiliate. Stop, stop, stop. Apophis was very doubtful about whether there was some problem with her brain when she last reincarnated, leading her to start talking nonsense in front of her. I have no interest in you. Even if I do, why would I be interested in woman? I only care about the fate of my people. Yes, it's because of this, so I don't hate you. The goddess flipped her silver hair. Everyone calls you the tyrant demon lord, but sometimes you are unbelievably gentle. So Apophis, can you give up your plan and live the life you want? The demon lord didn't answer immediately. She looked at the goddess's face, then at the city behind her, ablaze with fire. After a long pause, she spoke. I can't. When I took on the title of ruler of the demons, it represented more than just myself. The demon race respects me, the generals believe in me, and I promise to bring them a better life, a more hopeful future. So, in every battle I give my all, because I don't know if it will be my last chance. From the birth of the demon race, we've had our glories and our declines. My efforts have shaped our history. Destructive energy pulses from Apophis's hand, a terrifying power seemingly reaching a critical point. To restore the glory of the demon race, to protect my children, it is my unshirkable duty. All right, all right. Hearing her impassioned words, the goddess didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled somewhat happily. I didn't plan to dissuade you with just a few words. If anyone understands you best, I'm second, and no one dares to claim the first. Next time you reincarnate, maybe you should check your brain first. Apophis's mouth twitched. I'm really curious, if one day you no longer need to fight, what would you become? The goddess raised her broadsword, channeling all her life force into it, the blade emitting a dazzling golden light. What are you doing? The demon lord frowned. Such a collision of two powerful forces could have unpredictable consequences. Even the goddess reincarnation technique might not be spared. Are you throwing away your life? The ultimate forbidden curse was already formed, and Apophis had no way to turn back. We should also have our own lives, Tilda, the goddess said. Don't you think, Apophis? Absolute sword. Ultimate forbidden curse reincarnation. Boom! A massive mushroom cloud, large enough to cover the sky, rose from the demon lord's city. At that moment, both the demon race and humans turned their heads to look. With this battle, decades of chaos came to an end, and the continent entered a new era. As for the demon lord and the goddess, they became just two terms in history textbooks, occasionally mentioned. 3,200 years later, the once invincible demon race ultimately met its defeat at the hands of a coalition of multiple races, known as the multiracial United Empire. The demon lord was killed in battle, and her 4 heavenly demon kings were either captured or eliminated. After this war, the demon race declined drastically and became a marginalized and persecuted race on the continent. The 3 major powers that defeated the demon race subsequently became the new rulers of the continent. These powers were the Asumos Church, the dragon race, and the Fata, which later split into 3 towers. As the supreme leader of the dragon race, the sacred dragon king, Membeli, naturally acquired an unparalleled status across the continent. Beyond his lofty position, Membeli's strength was unfathomable. He single-handedly repelled the attack of hundreds of thousands of demon troops and severely wounded 3 of the 4 heavenly demon kings. In doing so, he laid the foundation for the coalition's victory. To the people of the continent at that time, only 2 beings could possibly rival Dragon King Membeli: Ans, the strongest apostle of heaven from Asumo's church, and Harisha, the supreme leader of Fata, both peak-level 8 divine being. Indeed, countless individuals who attempted to challenge the Dragon King eventually failed. Under his immense power, they were subdued and ultimately swore allegiance to him. Fortunately, despite his overwhelming strength, Membeli was nothing like the former Demon King, who had misused his power. Membeli was a noble and strong individual who never bullied the weak. He even used his power to maintain balance among the various major powers on the continent. Punishing the wicked and maintaining peace, he became a guardian of order on the continent. Membeli's numerous achievements and ever-rising reputation meant that he was revered by many. During the initial war, he had used his own body as a shield to block the demon lord's forbidden curse, thereby saving 1/3 of the continent's population. Consequently, he became a figure of faith for many, his status rivaling even the goddess of Asumo's church. Countless legends about the Dragon King, as well as the now active Eastern Holy Dragon Church, were born in this era. Considering Membeli's formidable strength and the long lifespan of the Dragon clan, people across the continent believed that he would be with them forever. He would always be the guardian of the continent, maintaining the world's peace and tranquility. However, while everyone believed this to be the case, the news of the Dragon King's death 800 years ago struck like a bolt from the blue, leaving countless people dumbfounded. As for how the Dragon King died, well, there are lots of theories. More than 800 years ago, Dragon King Membeli reached the pinnacle of dragon existence. Not only did he have absolute influence within the dragon race, but he also had an extraordinary reputation across the continent. At one point, he was even revered as the dragon god. Membeli was riding high and full of vigor at this time. At that moment, he had 2 main objectives left in his life. One was to keep practicing, aiming to break through the peak of the 8th level and step into the realm of legend, becoming a being that had entered the realm of gods. The other goal was to become the guardian of the continent. Having witnessed too many tragedies, Membeli wanted to preserve this hard-won peace. Given the past millennia of interracial conflicts and the great expansion of the demon race, the continent was riddled with scars. Recovery was the main task at hand. Membeli vowed to eliminate anyone who tried to disrupt this peaceful atmosphere. "Whoever you are, if you try to disrupt the order, I will destroy you. If you dare to overreach, I will mercifully help you meet your end." These were words Membeli had once spoken. Arrogant, perhaps, but he had absolute confidence in his own strength. And the source of his confidence was his overwhelming power, enough to crush all life. In his view, there was no one left on Ansita continent who could challenge him. Evil threats to the peace of the continent had been eliminated. Even if some evil tried to rise again, he, as a partner of justice and a guardian of the continent's order, could easily crush it. This way of thinking persisted until that day. On the day of the Dragon Ancestor Festival, Ans, once a fellow warrior and now the heavenly apostle of the church, arrived at King Membeli's royal chamber with urgent news. Upon hearing Ans' report, Membeli took a moment, silently thinking. "Ans, are you saying that you've detected the shadow's energy in the winter forest? That legendary force belonging to the demon lord. Are you sure about this? At this, Ans, a middle-aged man wearing pure white knight's armor, looked earnestly at the dragon before him. Do I have any reason to lie to you? Fair point. So, what's the origin of this power? We currently believe it's the result of an experiment conducted by the demons. An experiment? Yes, the Demon King and Kibai performed it in Winter Forest before the Great Battle. It seems they were trying to tap into the power of Demon Lord through ancient incantations and ritual circles. They were likely aiming to summon a minion of Demon Lord to bless their race. After all, in their eyes, the legendary Demon Lord is a deity belonging to the demon race. Demon Lord, isn't that being supposedly from another realm? These fools. Anyway, wasn't that experiment destroyed by Herish's forbidden spell, which bombed the middle of the forest? The captured demon at that time even admitted their experiment had failed. So why would the power of the shadows suddenly appear now? The information comes from the demon capital, which is 108,000 miles away from Winter Forest. Given the unreliable state of the demon's information system at that time, their news may not be accurate. You're saying the experiment might have succeeded? Yes, judging by the few traces of the shadow's energy we detected in the forest, it seems likely. I suspect that the demons managed to summon something akin to a minion of Demon Lord. However, because of the forbidden spell, they couldn't control it and couldn't get it to appear on the battlefield during the Great Battle. A minion of Demon Lord, huh? Even in death, that Demon King is a headache, truly a detestable creature. Membeli narrowed his eyes, showing a look of disdain yet tinged with lethal seriousness. After all, the Demon Lord was a horrifying entity that had nearly destroyed the world in the past, and its minions, being creatures that harness the power of the Demon Lord, undoubtedly pose a threat to world peace. In his viewpoint, such beings must be eliminated immediately, lest the consequences become unthinkable. With that thought, the Dragon King cast a meaningful glance toward the north. So you've come to me because this minion of the Demon Lord has appeared. You want me to accompany you to Winter Forest to deal with it, don't you? At this, Ans gave a slight nod, neither confirming nor denying outright. Yes, given the uncertainty about the strength of this minion of the demon god, I think it's safer for us to go together. Us, you mean? Are you saying Harisha will also come? Yes, the three of us going together will be safer. All three of us. You're being overly cautious, Ans. Better safe than sorry when dealing with minions of the Demon Lord. We don't know what level of creature we might encounter. We have to give it our all. Besides, the Archbishop also recommended this course of action, so I'm just following orders. If that old man says so, then should we mobilize the army? There's no need for that. If the battle reaches such a level, others won't be able to intervene anyway. Bringing an army would only burden us. Also, only a few higher-ups in our church are aware of the appearance of the Demon Lord's minion. We're not planning to make this public to avoid panic. So, forget about mobilizing troops. Fair enough. We'll take care of it quietly. But Winter Forest is massive. How will you find the minion? The forest itself has a natural interference field, making it hard to expand our sensing area. Don't worry about that. Archbishop gave me an item once used by the Demon Lord. It can reportedly resonate with the nearby shadow's energy. With this, we should be able to locate the minion quickly. Saying this, Anne slowly took out a gemstone from his spatial ring, emanating a faint golden glow. Membeli had no reason to doubt the words of his old comrade-in-arms. So when do we leave? No time to waste, we leave now. All right then, let's save the world one more time. In Membeli's heart, the safety of the continent was of the utmost importance. When Ans proposed to eliminate this significant threat of the Demon Lord's minion, King Membeli immediately agreed to set out. After meeting with the Supreme Harisha of the Fata Magic Tower, the three guardians of the present-day continent fully geared up and headed for Winter Forest. And then, in this extremely cold northern land, the Dragon King encountered an unforgettable dark figure, and a swarm of bloody red butterfly that looked like they were messengers of death. It goes without saying, the golden gemstone Anne's brought had a remarkable effect, relying on Membeli and the other two unparalleled experts' keen perception, along with the gemstone's inherent ability to resonate with the shadow energy. They quickly located the point in the vast winter forest where the concentration of the shadow energy was at its peak. That was precisely the location of the demonic deity's follower. After confirming the enemy's coordinates, Dragon King and his two companions unleashed their boundless and immense power. Previously, due to the sheer strength within them, they would never dare to use their power indiscriminately within their respective territories. But it was different now. In the lifeless winter forest, unleashing their power wouldn't cause any significant destruction. Accompanied by a towering aura, the three unparalleled experts abruptly entered the icy plains of the northern part of the winter forest. And there, on that vast icy plain, they found the target of their journey. However, upon seeing the minion of Demon Lord, the trio were momentarily stunned, not knowing what to do. Even Membeli, the largest of the three and the Dragon King, narrowed his dragon pupils in surprise, his light golden eyes filled with astonishment and disbelief. What? She is the minion of Demon Lord. Even Membeli, who has seen it all and carries the title of Guardian of the Continental Order, couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment at this moment. The reason for such shock was because the appearance of this minion was vastly different from what he had imagined. Rather than the grotesque monster with sharp fangs and claws, and a nauseating visage as Membeli had imagined, reflected in his draconic eyes was a breathtakingly beautiful young girl with black hair. At this moment, that black figure was quietly sitting at the edge of an ice cliff. The young girl had enviable, satin-like long black hair, with the tips as red as blood. Her flowing hair added a bewitching allure to her demeanor. Her eyes were captivating, her nose delicate, her skin as white as snow, and her red lips were like a lone plum blossom in the snow, exuding a sultry arrogance. Her ruby-like, clear and bright eyes seemed to possess a soul-stirring magic. Her slender and graceful figure, her soft arms like lotus roots, her beautiful and round legs, her finely sculpted calves, all adorned with delicate and smooth skin, she truly was a sight to behold. Her fairy-like face, along with such a perfect figure, was truly like a goddess descending to earth. Even though she was wrapped in a crudely made animal skin coat, it could not hide the beauty that tugged at one's heartstrings. Even Membeli, who had seen countless beauties, couldn't help but show a stupefied expression. Who is she? Why is she here? Membeli couldn't help but mutter. Although the appearance of such a striking, goddess-like woman in the lifeless icy plains raised many questions, Membeli felt a hint of self-doubt beginning to sprout in his heart. Did we get the wrong enemy? Is this girl really the demonic deity's subordinate, the kind of monster we imagined? Shouldn't a minion of a demon lord be a brutish, menacing creature? How could it be such a beautiful young girl? Such thoughts involuntarily sprang up in Membeli's mind. However, as seasoned warriors who have weathered countless storms, Membeli and his two companions quickly came back to their senses and dismissed the thoughts they had just entertained. No, something is definitely off about this girl. After sensing the aura surrounding the black-haired young girl, Membeli's dragon pupils suddenly contracted. The previous doubt in his eyes vanished in an instant, replaced by an indescribable sense of gravitas and a look of someone facing a formidable adversary. Because, The girl's stifling aura was indeed the legendary shadow force. This girl was the source of that shadow force, the cause behind the atmospheric anomaly in the winter forest. So this girl is truly the demon lord's minion. If so, are we to eliminate her? Though Membeli disliked the idea of destroying something so beautiful, he would show no mercy for the sake of world peace, given his role as a guardian. A terrifying pale gold magical power began to gather between Membeli's dragon claws. However, unlike before, the Dragon King did not hastily attack, but rather intently observed the black-haired young girl. Different from his two human companions. As a dragon, Membeli possesses much greater perceptive abilities and a terrifying instinct for sensing danger. After the initial shock, he immediately steadied himself and began to carefully assess the state of the young girl with black hair. Without a doubt, though the black-haired young girl contained a terrifying shadow force within her. On the surface, the concentration of her shadow force and the energy fluctuations around her were not particularly strong, perhaps at the level of 6 or lower, which was negligible for them, 3 peak level 8. However, that invisible pressure emanating from her soul made Membeli very uneasy. Furthermore, according to ancient texts, beings with shadow force gradually lose their sanity, becoming bloodthirsty and mad. Without a certain level of power, it is impossible for the holder of the shadow force to retain their sanity. Therefore, in Membeli's opinion, the strength of the black-haired young girl must certainly exceed level 6. If Membeli, the sacred Dragon King, couldn't figure out the girl's strength, it only meant she was way stronger than him. Coming to this realization, Membeli inhaled deeply. He clenched his claws, and his powerful magic began to surge within him, preparing him for battle like never before. All the while, he eyed the mysterious black-haired girl cautiously and thought about his next steps. Can they avoid a fight with such a formidable being? Can they negotiate peace and simply stay in the northern territory instead of heading south? The black-haired girl didn't seem like the mindless demonic creatures of legend. If a peace was possible, that would be the best outcome. But if not, could the three of them defeat her with their current strength, and at what cost? However, while Membeli was deep in thought, Ans, the heavenly apostle, couldn't contain himself any longer. After confirming through the golden orb's resonance that the black-haired girl was indeed a minion of Demon Lord, Anne's eyes lit up with a fierce battle spirit. Driven by an unshakable sense of justice, his red holy magic erupted from him like a dam breaking, instantly dispersing the blizzard in the icy plains and turning the sky red. The massive wave of holy magic caused the sky to tremble, the ground to crack, and even space itself showed signs of fracture. Even monsters miles away could feel Anne's overwhelming aura and fled in all directions. Lifting his longsword, enveloped in dazzling red light and holy fire, Ans pointed it at the girl's face without any hesitation. "Don't think you can deceive me by disguising yourself as a human." Ans declared this with righteous indignation, under the surprised gaze of his two companions, just as they had when they faced the Demon King before. "I won't let you harm this world. Prepare to be destroyed." With that, Ans, gripping his holy sword and entering his battle mode, rushed toward the black-haired girl without a second thought, signaling Membeli and Harisha for a coordinated attack. "The Pope has said we must strike first against this demon. Let's finish her before she powers up. Membeli, Harisha, attack with me now." Facing the fast-approaching holy fire that could purify all evil, the black-haired girl merely glanced at Ans and continued to sit quietly on the shattered ice cliff. Her crimson eyes remained emotionless, like a beautiful doll devoid of feelings. Comparatively, Harisha and Membeli, his companions, seemed somewhat bewildered when they saw Ans initiate the attack. Membeli couldn't help but roar in frustration. Wait, you hot-blooded fool. In that moment, Membeli bit his lip, slightly angered. Even though Ans had been a good friend and a trusted ally for many years, Membeli felt the impulse to tackle this so-called savior hero, right then and there. Why? Because Ans' attack had led them into a situation from which there was no turning back. They had lost any chance for a peaceful resolution, and they had angered a creature unlike anything they had ever faced before. After seeing his partner impulsively launch the attack, Membeli tried to restrain the hot-headed hero. Unfortunately, before the Dragon King could unleash his power, the black-haired girl, sensing the hostility, tilted her head slightly. Her crimson eyes narrowed, and for the first time her demeanor changed. As her gaze shifted, the atmosphere around them also transformed in an instant. An oppressive force, cold enough to take one's breath away, descended from the sky, enveloping Membeli. A boundless surge of scarlet force emanated from the girl, radiating in all directions and instantly shattering the formidable aura of holy magic that Ans had conjured. What is this? No, this is bad. Come back, Ans. For the first time in hundreds of years, Membeli lost his cool and yelled at his companion. But it was too late. In the next instant, under the stunned gaze of Membeli and Harisha, the icy plains erupted, and countless bloody red butterflies burst forth from beneath the ice. The swarm of butterflies engulfed Ans, devouring his holy fire and with an irresistible force, consumed him entirely. The apostle, who had slain the Demon King and saved the world, possessing peak level 8 strength, didn't even get a chance to scream before he was swallowed by the endless swarm of bloody butterflies. After the flash of crimson light, a magnificent set of platinum armor and a red divine sword fell from the sky. However, the armor no longer had the protection of holy magic, and the divine sword was devoid of the church's holy flames. The man, hailed by many as a hero who saved the world, was utterly consumed by the swarm of bloody butterflies, leaving not a single piece of flesh or a bone behind. How is this possible? Membeli's eyes narrowed sharply, filled with disbelief and terror. His massive dragon body even began to tremble. His old companion had been mercilessly killed by the swarm of butterflies, an outcome completely beyond his expectations. Although Ans' attack was reckless, Membeli knew that this world-saving hero had something to rely on. Ans, divine war form combined with the church's holy flames, was known for its extraordinary vitality. Even if he died, he could be reborn from the flames. Killing him 3 or 4 times was required to completely eliminate this heavenly apostle. Ans was a true tank. And yet now, this tank was effortlessly defeated by the black-haired girl and didn't even trigger his revival, just like that. He's gone, a once-in-a-generation genius just like that. Gone. This has to be a joke. Membeli couldn't help but let out a roar of anger as he rapidly expanded his magical aura, attempting to locate Ans through sensing. Alas, after a quick search, Membeli came up empty-handed. There was no trace of Ans on the vast icy plains. Realizing that his companion of many years was gone forever, an indescribable sadness rapidly spread within Membeli's heart, causing the great dragon to let out a wail. However, as a top-tier powerhouse, the sacred Dragon King quickly suppressed his inner grief. He knew very well that now was not the time to mourn for his companion. The next moment, under Membeli and Harisha's intense gaze, the swarm of blood butterflies, having completely consumed Ans, suddenly changed their target. They aggressively assaulted them, the ones with the strongest magical presence in the vicinity. Faced with the blood-red butterflies screaming in from all directions, Membeli felt an unprecedented tremor. This feeling was even more intense than when facing the Demon King empowered by the force of shadow. At the same time, as he stared intently at the black-haired girl in the distance, a strong sense of danger suddenly overwhelmed Membeli. This monster is extremely dangerous. The power of the shadow within her vastly exceeded his own expectations. If this young girl leaves the Northern Territory and enters the human world, this power will surely corrupt the entire world. Then all creatures would turn into bloodthirsty monsters. The whole continent would become a living hell. Without a doubt, in Membeli's mind, the threat posed by this black-haired girl has already surpassed that of the ambitious Demon King. Additionally, after the two of them released their powers, Membeli could clearly sense the loathing and killing intent within the young girl's crimson eyes. Obviously, the records from ancient texts were not unfounded. Beings with the power of darkness truly harbored extreme hatred for other creatures. A demon with such horrifying strength, coupled with an endless enmity towards the living beings was indeed an unprecedented threat. If she were to leave the Northern Territory, the consequences would be unimaginable. Realizing this, Membeli, as a guardian of continental order and known as the Sacred Dragon King, looked more determined than ever. His immense magical power and dragon aura burst forth, pushing back the suffocating shadow force around him. Since the young girl ahead was so dangerous, for the sake of the living beings and this world, even if they were down to just 2 people, they had to defeat this demon. Besides, surrounded by the swarm of bloody butterflies, they had no way to retreat. A fight with their backs against the wall was their only option. After giving a glance to signal the blue-haired female mage not far away, Membeli abruptly accelerated his charging power. Just as the swarm of butterflies was about to engulf him, a dragon breath, packed with destructive force, was suddenly unleashed from the Dragon King's mouth. Several dazzling golden light beams tore through the atmosphere, bombarding the ocean formed by the bloody butterflies with immense force. Boom! A ground-shaking roar followed, and a golden fire mushroom cloud erupted in the sky. The intense heat shattered and vaporized the surrounding ice. In an instant, the once endless icy field was gone. The entire northern world was enveloped in this dazzling golden light at that moment. The Sacred Dragon King, true to his reputation as one of the strongest beings on the continent, had generated such a devastating destructive power with a brief charge. Even the threatening sea of bloody butterflies, capable of engulfing everything, was shattered under the powerful bombardment of the Dragon King's fire breath. The threat that could have swallowed the Dragon King was gone. After witnessing this, the black-haired young girl also seemed somewhat surprised and mechanically tilted her head a bit. And at that instant, when the young girl was distracted, the Sacred Dragon King, with his extraordinary combat experience, immediately seized the opportunity and swiftly unfurled his dragon wings. After absorbing the magical energy contained within the heavens and earth, he released another golden dragon breath fire, bursting forth like a roaring beast, and charged towards the black-haired young girl not far away. At the same time, Harisha, who received Dragon King's signal, appeared above the black-haired young girl using a teleportation spell. The blue-haired mage with fully killing intent in her eyes, and as she quickly chanted, 6 magical circles of different colors and elements rapidly sketched out in the sky. As Harisha waved her magical circle, an endless barrage of magical elemental beams rained down on the black-haired girl like a storm. Faced with this enemy who had killed her companion, the two unmatched cultivator immediately unleashed their full power. Years of teamwork made Membeli and Harisha's coordination almost telepathic. Even in the wake of Anne's tragic death, they could quickly organize a powerful counterattack. Their inner rage and sorrow were fully channeled into their attacks. In the next instant, the dragon breath cannon and countless magical elemental bullets shattered the defense of the blood-red butterflies, striking the black-haired young girl's body fiercely. These two devastating forces even reacted with each other, merging, concentrating, and exploding. Boom! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the dazzling light of death swallowed the black-haired girl whole. Everything around her, including the endless sea of red butterflies, was instantly obliterated by the blast. The terrifying aftershocks changed the landscape of the northern ice plains, and were even sensed by the holy woman in the distant divine hall. As for Membeli and Harisha, who were closest to the center of the explosion, they were also struck by the aftershocks and sent flying thousands of meters away, spitting out blood. Clearly, both unparalleled warriors had sustained considerable injuries after that attack. However, they had no time to worry about their condition. After stabilizing their bodies in the storm created by the explosion, both immediately focused on the center of the blast, trying to assess the condition of the Demon King's subordinate. Yet, as the dust and dim golden light dissipated, the sight that met their eyes caused their expressions to change dramatically. In Membeli's opinion, even if their joint attack couldn't win outright, it should have at least dealt significant damage and depleted the enemy's combat power. However, upon seeing the scene ahead, Membeli realized he had been far too optimistic. To say they had heavily wounded the enemy would be an overstatement. Their formidable and terrifying attack had not even scratched the enemy. This can't be. This is absolutely impossible. An extremely shocked and bewildered Dragon King uncontrollably let out a roar. At this moment, at the center of the explosion, the ice cliffs and glaciers had already vanished. However, a vast sea of thorny vines had appeared, enveloping the black-haired young girl who was the target of the attack. Judging from the extensive burn marks on these thorny vines, it was clear they had absorbed the full force of Membeli and Harisha's combined attack. The next instant, as the two strong warriors looked on in disbelief and doubt, countless thorny vines emitting a bluish eerie light gradually gathered beside the black-haired young girl. They twisted and intertwined, and eventually, under the embrace of a mysterious bluish power, turned into a human-sized blood-red bud. As the bud slowly opened, a youthful voice filled with respect gently emanated. "Mommy, can I kill them? What kind of demons is this?" Staring at the sudden sea of thorns and swarm of bloody butterflies that seemed to come back to life amid the flames, both Dragon King Membeli and Harisha wore deeply grim expressions. Before they could even make sense of the situation or react, the sea of thorns erupted violently. Countless thorns burst from the ground and launched a lethal attack on the two unparalleled warriors. Although the thorns' attack was not as vivid as the dragon breath fire or the divine magic, the dense, chilling aura surrounding them and the suffocating oppression they brought were enough to make both of them feel the threat of death. Apart from the thorns coming from the ground, above them, the bloody butterflies danced gracefully in the sky, forming a wave of red aura that surged towards them from all directions. Membeli's extraordinary intuition told him that either being entangled by the thorns or swallowed by the swarm of bloody butterflies would result in his downfall here. There was no doubt. They were in a crisis unlike any they had faced before. Compared to the challenges they faced while combating the Demon King with ants, this was far more severe. However, as warriors who had survived countless life-and-death battles and reached this level of prowess, neither Membeli nor Harisha were ones to give up easily. The enemy was powerful, and resisting might leave them with a slim chance of survival, but not resisting would only await them a tragic end of being consumed and dying. To evoke a miracle, one must not give up hope. After taking a deep breath and suppressing the rising sense of despair within him, Membeli's eyes hardened, and the magic power within him started to rage uncontrollably. Even his soul began to burn gradually, transforming into an endless source of energy that elevated his momentum. Glancing at the blue-haired woman not far away, who had already begun chanting a forbidden spell, Membeli let out an intense, hysterical roar. "Harisha, let's go all out against these demons," accompanied by a ground-shaking dragon roar. The golden dragon unfurled its magnificent wings and transformed into a destructive golden meteor, charging towards the incoming swarm of butterflies. On the other side, Harisha clenched her teeth and forcefully shattered the silver staff in her hands. Utilizing the divine artifact staff as a medium, she activated one of the most powerful divine magics on the continent, heavenly judgment. Faced with unprecedented evil, faced with demons that could drag the entire continent into an abyss. To prevent the world from plunging back into war, to avenge their fallen comrade, both unparalleled warriors had already abandoned any hope of survival. Holding a sink or swim mindset, they unleashed their full power and launched an attack on the swarm of bloody butterflies in the Sea of Thorns. Boom! As the guardians of continent and as the unparalleled heroes who had defeated the Demon King, Membeli and Harisha relied on their years of combat experience. They faced the threat of the bloody butterflies, which would consume them entirely, and the life-draining thorns with everything they had. Bloody butterflies surged forward. Thorny vines twirled wildly in the air. Wave after wave of terrifying attacks were masterfully dodged by Membeli and Harisha. Using their top-notch skills and uncanny ability to predict moves, they managed to avoid the enemy's onslaught. Once they realized their defenses couldn't hold up against the dreadful attacks from the Demon Lord's minion, they shifted their combat strategy. They opted for dodging and counterattacking during the fight with the enemy. Compared to these two experienced battle masters, the enemy, a black-haired young girl and the demoness beside her manipulating vines, clearly lacked combat experience. Their attack patterns were straightforward and simple. After their moves were read by these two supreme experts, their bloody butterflies and thorny whips had a hard time even touching Membeli and Harisha. Even if their attacks had the potential to destroy the world, they were meaningless if they could not hit the target. However, even though they successfully dodged the majority of the enemy's attacks, a grave expression always clouded Membeli's draconic eyes. By suppressing the enemy with sheer combat experience and mutual understanding, he and Harisha could barely hold their own against these demons for some time. But simply holding out wasn't enough. What they needed was victory. For that reason, while dodging attacks, they unleashed one powerful spell after another, sufficient to annihilate armies in an instant. These were aimed at the black-haired girl in an attempt to inflict heavy damage. Yet, their attacks, observed keenly by Membeli and Harisha, easily bypassed the vine defenses and hit the young girl squarely. However, neither the relentless dragon fire breath bombardments nor the consecutive bursts of holy magic, spear thrusts of the Dragon King, or their coordinated attacks could inflict any real damage on the black-haired girl. Even when they turned the mysterious thorny vines surrounding her into ash and disintegrated her thin animal skin attire, not a single scratch appeared on her. If there was, the wound would heal in an instant, leaving the girl unscathed. During these successive bombardments, as her clothes were almost completely disintegrated, countless bloody butterflies swarmed in to cover the naked body, instantly dissolving into numerous crimson energy particles. These particles reconvened and astonishingly transformed into a bloody red dress. This dress added to the girl's beauty and exuded an aura of bewitching elegance. Time and time again, their powerful onslaughts would have led to the downfall of their greatest enemy, the Demon King, had he been defenseless. However, the black-haired girl seemed unfazed. simply controlling her bloody butterflies to corner them dispassionately. On the surface, both sides were at a stalemate. But, as time passed, Membeli grew more anxious, with cold sweat dripping from his forehead. He knew this deadlock was pointless. They were running out of energy while the enemy was virtually unscathed. Once exhausted, they'd be instantly enveloped and annihilated by the bloody butterflies and thorny whips below. They needed to break through now. We have to stop this wave. After gulping down the last bottle of Tears of Nature, the majestic dragon's body disintegrated and reformed under a halo of golden light. With the aid of transformation magic, he turned into a white-haired man clad in golden armor. Though his body had shrunk, Membeli's aura had reached unprecedented heights. Gripping the Dragon King's spear tightly in his hand, his veins bulged, and his eyes filled with bloodshot veins. All the magical power within him, including the strength produced by his burning soul and dragon's blood, converged rapidly onto his spear. Membeli's facial features started to twist, oozing blood. As the power gathered, his body also reached its limit. However, this peerless warrior continued to dodge enemy attacks while gritting his teeth and channeling his own power. On the other side, with just a glance, Harisha understood Membeli's intention. She rushed to the forefront of the bloody butterflies without hesitation, attracting most of the enemy's attention. Then, sacrificing her right eye's vision and discarding her stamina, Harisha activated a forbidden spell known as Crone Heaven's Gate under a halo of dazzling white light. Instantly, tens of thousands of celestial beings like angels appeared on the savage battlefield at Harisha's command, and they launched an all-out attack on the black-haired girl. With Harisha giving her all in covering him, Membeli, the sacred Dragon King, finished gathering his energy and found the perfect opportunity. Taking advantage of the black-haired girl's focus on Harisha and the thorned sea and bloody butterflies busy dealing with the Angel Legion, Membeli's eyes narrowed. He turned into a golden flash, raising a tremendous wave of magical power and awe-inspiring dragon's might. Under the boost of Harisha's domain supporting magic, Membeli's speed, strength, defense, and burst power all reached epic proportions in this split second. Dalisa. Yelling at the top of his lungs, Membeli became a golden streak with unstoppable force, breaking through the sea of thorns at an indiscernible speed. He thrust his radiant spear, capable of banishing all darkness, directly at the black-haired girl. The next moment, Membeli held his breath, and under his tense and serious gaze, this attack, filled with all his might, did not disappoint him. When the black-haired girl turned her body to look at Membeli, the golden spear suddenly stabbed toward her chest. In an instant, a bright golden light burst forth, quickly chasing away the suffocating red light in the sky. Power surged from the spear's tip, radiating in all directions and changing the landscape. The force was so massive that it even ripped through the fabric of space, creating cracks in the sky around them. At this moment, a violent and shocking collision occurred between the pale gold magical power and the crimson shadowy force. Along with Membeli's furious roar, the golden spear finally broke through the shadowy force's defense. Under the ecstatic gaze of the two unparalleled warriors, it violently pierced the black-haired girl's chest, penetrating her heart. Success! Did we succeed? We did it! We won! Seeing that his full-powered strike had successfully pierced the enemy's chest, an ecstatic expression immediately appeared on Membeli's face. They, who had once been in utter despair, saw a glimmer of victory at this moment. All he had to do was to trigger the magical power within the Dragon King's spear, and they would surely inflict heavy damage on the enemy. Though the black-haired girl's defense was horrifyingly strong, if the explosion originated from inside her body, she would undoubtedly be unable to resist it. Even a powerful monster like her, the insides couldn't be invincible. With this thought, a fierce battle spirit suddenly erupted in Membeli's draconic eyes, and he tightly gripped his spear with both hands. However, just as he decided to finish the fight once and for all, he was shocked to see that, even with a fatal wound, the expression on the black-haired girl's face remained indifferent, as if she were an emotionless doll. She stared at him with those eerily calm eyes, making him feel a shiver down his spine. Then, out of nowhere, accompanied by an invisible force, a gut-wrenching pain suddenly shot up to Membeli's brain. In an instant, his face twisted in agony from the unbearable pain. What's going on? What is happening? In that moment, Membeli's attack stopped abruptly. He shakily lowered his head to look at his own chest, the source of the intense pain. And when the condition of his chest entered his field of vision, Membeli was suddenly frozen in place, overwhelmed with confusion, shock, and despair. At that moment, a deep, bottomless bloody hole had somehow appeared in the sacred Dragon King's chest. How is this possible? She didn't do anything. As a strange red light danced in the eyes of the black-haired girl, an unseen force quietly covered the whole battlefield. Just as a sudden bloody hole ripped open in sacred Dragon King Membeli's chest, Harisha, who was offering aerial cover from way up high, also coughed up a mouthful of blood. Shock and disbelief filled Harisha's eyes, just like Membeli's. Gazing at the mysterious bloody hole in her chest, Harisha was frozen in place. Even with her vast battle experience, she couldn't make sense of her sudden, severe injury. She was far from the enemy, and there was no sign that her protective barriers had been broken. "How did I get hurt?" Harisha muttered to herself. But she had no more energy to think about it. As her blood kept flowing, the mage, whose heart was now shattered, began to feel death closing in. Her mind started to cloud over with darkness. The magical circles around her suddenly fell apart, and Harisha, unable to fight it, plummeted from the sky into a thorn-filled death trap below. Harisha, watching his old friend plummet into a sea of thorns, unsure if she was alive or dead, Membeli clenched his jaw. His eyes, a blend of hatred and despair, fixated on the black-haired girl before him. Meanwhile, Membeli's eyes also filled with confusion. The whole situation was beyond his understanding. Membeli couldn't figure it out. His attack had successfully gone through the enemy, destroying her heart. So why was this black-haired girl still standing there like nothing happened, while he and Harisha were badly hurt out of nowhere? She hadn't done a thing. What's going on here? What did you do? Membeli howled hysterically at the black-haired girl. Though as a peak-level 8 powerhouse, even if he lost his heart, Membeli could still use magic to create a makeshift one to sustain his body while awaiting regeneration. However, because he had put all his strength into his spear, he had no energy left to sustain his badly injured body. Membeli felt as though he could faintly see the path of the underworld. Either way, he had charged forward, prepared to risk the obliteration of his soul. In such a situation, he might as well go all in against the enemy. In that moment, Membeli's eyes turned bloodshot. Ignoring the red butterflies swarming around him and the searing pain in his chest, he took a deep breath and released all the pent-up magical power in the Dragon King's spear, ready for mutual destruction. He aimed to penetrate the enemy's defenses with his spear, going through the black-haired girl's body. Then, by detonating the power within the spear, he would channel a massive amount of energy into the girl's body, destroying this terrible demon from inside. This was the ultimate goal of Membeli and Harisha. However, just as Membeli was gritting his teeth, waiting for the black-haired girl to explode, the Dragon King made an incredibly despairing discovery. after releasing the violent power contained within his spear. Nothing happened. The expected explosion didn't occur. The black-haired girl still looked at Membeli calmly, almost mocking him. This cannot, Before Membeli could finish speaking, his eyes widened in surprise. A sudden burst of intense heat started spreading through his chest, making his body inflate like a balloon. What? How? The next moment, overwhelmed with shock, anger, and despair, Membeli was consumed by a wave of destructive energy bursting inside his body. He exploded into pieces, scattering his remains across the sky. And Membeli's consciousness plunged into endless darkness. Abyssal demon are creatures that embrace the power of Demon Lord. These entities are the nightmare of all races on the continent. Whenever Abyssal demon appears, the various races of the continent set aside their differences and join forces to combat this terrifying disaster. These brutal and bloodthirsty demons tear apart and devour all living things, bringing death, curse, and other disasters to the entire continent. Everyone is filled with terror and wishes to eliminate them as quickly as possible. However, the power of abyssal demons is not something ordinary people can match. Even trained armies and knights of the church must pay a painful price to defeat them. Faced with these creatures, most people have only one choice: run for their lives. But where did these demons come from? Initially, the people on the continent had no knowledge. They only knew that these creatures first appeared thousands of years ago in the icy winter forest in the north. After generations of sacrifice and hard work to investigate winter forest, the mystery was finally unveiled. Demon Temple. This ancient temple deep in winter forest is the source of all evil. The temple contains strange and eerie black energy, which gives birth to abyssal demons. Ordinary monsters or animals in winter forest, when exposed to this black energy, become extremely bloodthirsty and ferocious, hostile to almost all living things, and their power increases. These creatures infected with shadow energy are known as abyssal demons. Abyssal demons originate from Demon Temple, and it is the evil power within the temple that brings them into existence. The scholars on the continent quickly reached this conclusion. With the announcement of this finding, the entire continent erupted into chaos. To end the tragedy caused by abyssal demons, all major races and empires formed a grand coalition, marching toward Winter Forest with the goal of finding Demon Temple and destroying it. However, people underestimated the number of abyssal demons inside the forest. Abyssal demons harbor deep enmity toward other species and instinctively launch attacks on areas where people gather. When the coalition army confidently entered the forest, it inevitably drew the attention of countless abyssal demons. Among them, some abyssal demons had reached the terrifying level of a demon kings. Demon kings equals 8th level. In the end, the coalition army was defeated, and less than 1/10 of the people who entered the forest returned alive. Since then, the various forces on the continent no longer dared to actively assemble troops and enter Winter Forest. At most, they sent small teams of 3 to 5 people to infiltrate and attempt to complete the beheading mission, without attracting the attention of other abyssal demons. Of course, these actions usually resulted in all members being declared missing. As a result, the major forces decided to switch to defense, building fortifications outside Winter Forest to prevent abyssal demons from leaving. In this way, 100 years passed peacefully. However, 300 years ago, the major empires and races made an astonishing discovery. The number of abyssal demons found around the forest was rapidly decreasing. While there used to be more than 40 sightings of abyssal demons every month 100 years ago, there were only a dozen or so per month, and now there are fewer than 10 per year. This naturally raised suspicions that something had happened in the winter forest, causing the decline in abyssal demon numbers. Perhaps the strange energy within the demon temple was weakening. Did this mean that the danger of entering the cold and frosty winter forest had decreased? As more and more speculations arose, elite teams from various forces gathered the courage to venture into the cold land once again. They had only one objective: Demon Temple. In Winter Forest, near Chegwa Glacier, a team of 5 adventurers sat quietly, preparing themselves while cautiously guarding against sudden abyssal demon attacks. The 5-member team was composed of strong and sturdy people, wearing white robes with rare golden threads embroidered on them, forming a symbol resembling a pair of wings. If there were others present, seeing this distinctive pattern would easily know their identity. They hailed from Asumo's church, the most powerful church on the entire continent. Led by the brave hero Pix, one of the 10 apostles, the team of 5 had been dispatched by the Pope as special forces to investigate Winter Forest. However, among the team of 5, there was an exceptionally unusual presence. A little girl dressed in tattered clothes, delicate and cute, with beautiful gray double ponytails and bright, lively eyes. Her young, innocent face combined with her slender and petite figure couldn't help but evoke sympathy. Despite her youth, the little girl was undoubtedly a rare beauty, promising a bright future. Yet her beautiful face, side by side with her shabby clothing, emitted an uncanny aura. The little girl seemed out of place before the hero, Pix, causing him to furrow his brow in confusion. Something seems strange. Judging by her attire, this little girl is undoubtedly from a poor family. Could she be one of the wild children from Mora village? But how can a child from such a place have skin as fair as the north's glistening water? Pix began to doubt the girl's true identity. However, no matter how he observed her, he couldn't sense any trace of magic, aura, energy, or the unique power of abyssal demon's shadow emanating from the little girl. Is she just an ordinary girl, an ordinary little girl in this cold and big winter forest? How is that possible? Pix's watery blue eyes filled with confusion and suspicion. While contemplating the girl's identity, Beckham, a tall man sitting next to Pix, stood up and approached the little girl, holding a piece of bread in his hand. Amid the team's strange gazes, Beckham smiled and squatted down in front of the little girl, offering her the bread. "Here you go, little one. This bread is for you." "Really, thank you, uncle." The little girl looked up with joyous eyes at the black and burly man before her. "Eat slowly." Receiving Beckham's nod, the little girl excitedly took the bread, holding it in her hand like a precious treasure, gradually lowering her guard around the group. Observing this, Beckham smiled with satisfaction and noticed the simple wooden hairpin adorning the little girl's head. The hairpin itself was roughly crafted, lacking artistic value, but it stood out due to the 2 delicate and exquisite white little birds with red crowns standing atop it. This amused Beckham, and he asked the little girl with curiosity, "Are these 2 little birds your pets? What are their names?" "Butterfly and Crystal," replied the little girl. As Beckham played with the 2 small little birds, he sat next to the little girl, his actions carrying a hidden meaning. Seeing the girl's lack of reaction, he even reached out and patted her shoulder, his smile gradually turning lecherous. His 4 teammates, including Pix, couldn't help but display looks of disgust. Of course, Beckham paid no mind to his companion's disgusted stares. His attention was fully fixated on the little girl's beautiful face and youthful body. Certain pervert thoughts were constantly breeding in his mind. Seeing that the girl was not uncomfortable or unhappy with his arm around her shoulder, Beckham became even more reckless, his massive body sticking closer to the little girl. "This little beauty is just what I was looking for tilde. Little one, why did you come to Winter Forest alone? Even the outskirts are very dangerous. I came here to find food. Dangerous. Is it really dangerous here? The little girl blinked curiously, her emerald eyes full of innocence. As he looked into the innocent eyes of the little girl, Beckham became even more excited. That's only natural. This is the Winter Forest. With your small body, encountering an abyss demon would surely be dangerous. Oh, wait a minute, Uncle will take you back. Where is your home? No need, Uncle, I can go back by myself. But isn't it dangerous here? Why did you come here? Haha, Uncle and his team are elite forces under the Sunlight Squad of Asumo's church. We came here to find the legendary Demon Temple. Beckham laughed and said, intending to use his identity under the Sunlight Squad of Asumo's to gain the trust of this innocent girl. However, the moment he spoke, the smile on the little girl's face gradually disappeared, replaced by an indescribable killing intent. Her emerald eyes also emitted a strange red light, and the surrounding atmosphere became even colder. Looking for Demon Temple, you are looking for my mother too. When Beckham heard the words of the gray-haired little girl, he shook his head in disbelief and couldn't hold back his laughter. He found it hard to believe what he was hearing. Little one, what else can you do at the Demon's Temple? Figure out its location. If possible, destroy it. Otherwise, what else can you do there? We're not like those cultists who expect to gain power from the Demon's Temple. While shaking his head and sighing at the little girl's ignorance, Beckham patted her shoulder. However, as he continued to pat her, Beckham's eyebrows furrowed. Huh. Wait, didn't this country girl just say something strange? Wait a minute. Little one, what did you just say? Your mother, what does that mean? But in response to Beckham's question, the bright smile that had remained on the little girl's face had disappeared, replaced by a sinister smirk. Of course, just like those people before you, you all are so arrogant. Arrogant? What are you talking about, you country girl? Exactly what it sounds like. I'm saying you're stupid. What? How dare you? Feeling the contempt in the little girl's jade-colored eyes, Beckham's muscles tensed as he was extremely displeased with being underestimated by this wild little girl. He wanted to teach her a lesson, and when she cried out beneath him, she would know the consequences of insulting a member of the Sunlight Squad. However, just as Beckham's right hand was about to tear off the little girl's thin clothes, an unprecedented surge of pain suddenly shot through his brain from his right arm. In the next moment, with Beckham's dumbfounded gaze, his right arm, which was holding onto the little girl's shoulder, was torn off by her alive and kicking. Suddenly, blood splattered everywhere. The bright red blood gushing from the severed arm stained Beckham's white robe and covered the little girl in a layer of bloody veil. What? Huh. My arm. What the hell did you do? The intense pain caused Beckham to scream in agony, and he looked at the little girl with a resentful and incredulous gaze. He had not felt any energy fluctuations from her body. She was just an ordinary little girl, right? How could she tear off his arm directly? Beckham's brain was already occupied by emotions of terror and doubt, and he tried to understand what was happening. Unfortunately, the little girl had no intention of giving him time to think. Butterfly Crystal, it's time for dinner, the harmless little girl said calmly. After the words come out of her mouth, the two small white birds, which were quiet and peaceful just a moment ago, suddenly grew rapidly and became crazed, transforming into a bloodthirsty monster with red eyes and emitting a horrifying black aura. At the instant when Beckham sensed this energy, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Abyssal demons. Beckham couldn't believe that this was his final word. Before he could even react, the bird's sharp wings sliced through his waist like a blade, tearing apart the strapping 2-meter-tall man in two. The ground was stained with bright red blood, and the flying intestines further fueled the bird's ferocity. After emitting a piercing and eerie screech, the two birds suddenly turned into two black lights and attacked the 4 remaining members of the church, who were staring in shock. In an instant, the earth shook and the mountains trembled, as the demon-shaped monster's sinister laughter and the church members' desperate screams shattered the silence along the riverbank. Lily. As he watched his teammate get their heart ripped out by the demon birds, Pix trembled as he gripped his sword hilt, his hatred like a burst dam flooding his reason. "You bastard!" Staring fiercely at the little girl not far away, Pix let out a heart-wrenching roar. Though he didn't know how this little girl could command abyssal demons, she was undoubtedly the mastermind. It was she who summoned those 2 abyssal demons to launch a surprise attack on his unprepared teammate. The thought of avenging his comrade occupied Pix's mind. A powerful blue sword aura burst out of his body, attaching itself to the holy sword in his hand, turning it into a 5-meter-long giant sword radiating destructive power. The powerful strength of Sword Saint 7th tier was fully unleashed at this moment. The sky trembled and the earth groaned. The powerful sword energy caused the space to gradually warp, and the 2 demon birds beside him even trembled and involuntarily stepped back. "Die!" Roaring with anger, Pix suddenly turned into a lightning bolt and rushed straight toward the little girl, his sword pointing directly at her neck. However, in the face of the brave warrior's powerful attack, the little girl still wore that cruel smile, tilted her head, and pretended to be surprised. "Sister, someone's bullying me." "Wait, sister, she has a companion." As these words were spoken, an unsettling feeling suddenly arose within Pix. And in the next moment, this feeling became a reality. With a deafening roar, a white giant wolf suddenly rushed out of the flames, its blood-red vertical pupils filled with killing intent and a strong bloodthirsty impulse. The moment its eyes locked onto him, he couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. And when he felt the thick black energy surrounding the giant wolf, Pix revealed a look of shock and despair. How is this possible, a demon king? After the shock, death was imminent. The wolf's sharp teeth tore Pix's great sword into pieces, and all of his defenses, including his sword aura, magic shield, and the tough armor specially prepared by the church, were all shattered under the wolf's bite, leaving nothing behind. What also shattered was Pix's flesh and bloody body. Lowering her head to look at the 5 bodies that had already been torn apart, the little girl disdainfully stroked her gray hair. "Why are there more and more idiots like these lately? It's really annoying." The little girl complained indifferently, muttering a few words before turning her head to look at the white giant wolf tearing apart the body of the deceased hero. "Don't eat them, sister. If mommy sees you, she'll scold you again." However, the giant wolf seemed to pay no attention to the little girl's warning and instead ripped off the head of the deceased and held it in its mouth. With a deep voice, the wolf spoke slowly. "This human has a lot of energy inside tilde. It would be a waste not to eat it tilde also. Mommy isn't here right now, so don't worry tilde." "Sigh, sister, why do you never learn?" The little girl sighed and rubbed her forehead with her hand. "Never mind. Don't blame me for not warning you when you get scolded later." It's okay. Mommy isn't here anyway, so it's fine tilde. "Oh, is that so?" What do you mean, Liu?" Instinctively, the giant wolf sensed something was wrong and looked at her sister who was smirking behind her. Soon, the wolf realized the reason for Liu's smile, as the space behind them had already twisted at that moment. Looking at the bloody spatial array that appeared without warning in front of them, along with the bloody butterflies floating near the array, the giant wolf was stunned, and the head it held in its mouth fell to the ground. No, no, this is too much of a coincidence. In the next moment, a flickering red light appeared, and a girl dressed in exquisite and elegant black robes and gauze appeared before them. The girl appeared to be around 16 years old, possessing a slender figure that exuded a subtle charm of youthfulness. Her silky black hair cascaded over her shoulders, and the tips of her hair were as bright red as blood. Her snow-white skin was as clear as jade, and her exquisite features seemed like a masterpiece created by the Creator himself, stunning enough to make all things pale in comparison. Her bright and clear crimson-red eyes, like rubies, were filled with bewitching magic. And as the black-haired girl squinted her eyes slightly, an overwhelming aura from a higher being was present. And in the next moment, the black-haired girl pursed her lips and angrily scolded. "Limo, how many times have I told you not to eat those things? You stinky brat, is your butt itching again?" The girl's voice was melodious, like the sound of a clear spring, but there was an indescribable sense of domination in it. The giant wolf named Limo trembled in fear, whimpering and even shrinking into a little husky, hiding behind her sister Liu with a timid expression, looking at the black-haired girl. Seeing this, the black-haired girl shook her head helplessly, then looked sternly at the gray-haired girl protecting Limo. "Liu, you too. Didn't I tell you not to provoke the church people? I still need them to help the heroine." "Sorry, Mommy." Liu obediently nodded. However, there were no hints of regret in her emerald eyes. In short, it was like she was saying, "I know I did wrong, but I'll do it again next time." Sighing, the black-haired girl named Yumo, who was the creator of Limo and Liu, rubbed her head with her index finger. "Why are you two so difficult to deal with?" A young student who has just finished his final high school exams is ready to start his new life as a college student. On Friday morning, he has come to the store in the east of the city to buy his first laptop with the prize money given by his parents. However, Yumo seems to have forgotten to check his fortune teller before leaving home. As he stands outside the electronics store, ready to show the security guard his health code on his phone, an unexpected incident occurs. The security guard, who was urging Yumo to show his health code just a moment ago, suddenly stops talking. Puff! Then, with a strange sound, a sticky liquid splashes onto Yumo's body, causing him to shudder all over. Looking at the red liquid covering his phone screen, Yumo freezes on the spot. What the hell? Is this blood? What's going on here? Is this a prank? Yumo suddenly looked up and prepared to send the most sincere curse to those pranksters. However, in the next moment, Yumo was horrified to find that the blood was not a prop for a prank, but real blood. He saw that the security guard who had just stopped him was now dismembered, turned into a pile of rotten flesh on the ground, and the splattered blood dyed everything around him red. Even the intestines had fallen onto Yumo's neck, making him nauseous. Behind the security guard's corpse, a huge monster covered in black spikes and shaped like a unicorn beetle stared at everyone. Why did he say everyone? Because the monster's head had hundreds of red eyeballs, which was enough to make anyone who looked at it feel extremely nauseous and creepy. What the, am I dreaming? Looking at the monster's constantly dripping blood from its mouth and its terrifying claws, Yumo's fear was suddenly aroused, and he trembled all over, with cold sweat pouring out of him. He unconsciously stepped back, fearing that he would end up like the security guard, with nobody intact. However, his backward movement attracted the monster's attention. In the next moment, under Yumo's horrified and desperate gaze, the unknown black monster suddenly opened its blood-stained mouth and pounced toward him. Under normal circumstances, Yumo would certainly have died at the hands of that unknown monster. However, even though he eventually fell to the ground, He has not torn apart like many other bystanders. At this moment when he was about to be attacked by the monster, Yumo's good luck came into play. At a critical moment, he accidentally stepped on an orange peel, causing him to fall backward and miraculously dodge the monster's attack. But fate was not so kind to the hapless bystander standing behind him. The monster wasted no time in tearing the unfortunate soul limb from limb. Taking advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Yumo regained his senses and, with the strong support of his survival instincts, quickly got up and ran toward the outskirts of the electronics store, regardless of everything else. However, as usual, every time good luck came into play, a stroke of bad luck would immediately follow. When Yumo thought he had already escaped death, he was immersed in the joy of surviving a disaster. But God played a huge joke on him. Just as he rushed out of the electronics store, a truck driver who was also trying to escape recklessly drove out from the side. And so, boom tilde tilde. With a deafening crash, Yumo was sent flying into the air, spinning 360 degrees before crashing to the ground, utterly bewildered and confused. Mother of asterisk, he cursed. Every time he thought back to that incident, he seethed with anger, wishing he could somehow get his hands on that truck driver and teach him a lesson. But of course, such thoughts were purely fanciful. Looking around at the pitch-black void surrounding him, Yumo sighed in resignation. As a disembodied soul floating in this emptiness, he had little choice but to accept his situation. It was a far cry from his usual worldview as a staunch materialist, one who believed that death meant complete and utter dissolution into nothingness, leaving behind only a cold, lifeless corpse. But now it seemed that he had no choice but to reconsider his deeply ingrained beliefs. After all, he was currently little more than a ghostly apparition, floating in some otherworldly realm. And wherever that realm was, he had no way of knowing. He was unsure of where he was heaven, hell, it seemed like neither. There was nothing here except for boundless darkness. He had lost track of how long he had been stuck in this void. Did time even exist here? He wasn't sure. All he knew was that it was incredibly boring. As a soul, he couldn't even sleep and was left to wander alone in this darkness. It was driving him to the brink of madness. Strangely enough, his consciousness remained alert and he couldn't even lose himself in his own thoughts. In this situation, the only way he could pass the time was to recall memories. So, after accepting the fact that he had died and parted ways with his family and friends, and even accepting the unfortunate reality that he might never leave this place, he frequently found himself lost in his memories. Reconstructing in his mind the beautiful blue skies, the friendly faces of his loved ones, the delicious food, and the rich and colorful entertainment. Memories of the past, both happy and sad, played in his mind like a movie, over and over again. He had lost track of how much time had passed while he was lost in thought, revisiting his experiences before death. Ah, when will this end? He cried out in despair. It would be better to die and scatter my soul than to keep floating here forever. He cried out, frustrated. Oh God, please let me out of here. I don't want to be here any longer. If this is what the afterlife is like, then it's even worse than hell. It was the 223,000th time he had made this plea, and as expected, there was no response. However, this time, something seemed different. Just as he was about to launch into yet another tirade, a voice like that of a nightingale, soft and enchanting, suddenly spoke into his mind. Hey there, handsome. It looks like you're up for a challenge. How about you become my ultimate boss? Yumo was taken aback. Heh, who said that? The sudden voice made Yumo both surprised and happy. Happy because he had finally heard another person's voice in this godforsaken place after so long. surprised because there could actually be other people's voices in this godforsaken place. What the heck? Taken aback, Yumo's soul suddenly turned around and looked toward the source of the sound, which was a pitch-black place with nothing in it. Suddenly, a golden crack appeared and rapidly expanded until it became a door-sized crack. Immediately afterward, while Yumo was staring in shock, a young woman slowly walked through the crack and floated into this dark world of nothingness. Looking at the silver-haired woman who suddenly appeared in front of him, Yumo was extremely shocked. Perhaps such feelings were inappropriate at this moment, but the woman in front of him was really too beautiful. It caused Yumo's heart to race uncontrollably. Her beautiful silver-white hair was like a flying waterfall. Her slender willow eyebrows and her pair of golden eyes were soul-stirring. Her exquisite and straight nose, pink and moist lips, flawless and crystalline face, and graceful figure combined to form a perfect and flawless appearance. Paired with her pure and clean skin that was as white lotus petals, as well as her affectionate and loving expression. In an instant, they all converged into an indescribable masterpiece of beauty. Although the woman was only wearing a simple and elegant white long dress, this plainness and simplicity actually highlighted her holy temperament. There was no doubt that she was the most beautiful woman he had seen in his entire life. Although the woman was only wearing a simple and elegant white long dress, this simplicity and unpretentiousness only highlighted her holy temperament. There was simply no comparison between the idols and models he had once followed online and the girl in front of him. As a virgin, Yumo was stunned on the spot when he saw the silver-haired girl, not knowing what to do. His brain suddenly froze, and it took a while before he regained his composure. After frantically shaking his head and calming his restless heart, Yumo took a deep breath and slowly spoke. Who are you? Then he was surprised to find out that his soul could actually speak. What the hell is going on? Clearly, I couldn't make any sound before when I was in this space. And I'm a soul, right? How am I talking? Yumo was once again at a loss, staring blankly at his body. At this point, the mysterious silver-haired woman in front of him shook her head with both annoyance and amusement, and couldn't help but reach out and give Yumo a smack on the forehead. Okay, stop speculating. The reason you're able to speak isn't important, is it? What? Seeing that the other person had seen through his thoughts, Yumo was at a loss for words. But then he realized that the other person was right. What did it matter that I could talk now? There were already so many inexplicable things that had happened lately. One more thing wouldn't make a difference. With this thought in mind, Yumo no longer dwelled on the matter and calmed himself. He respectfully looked at the mysterious silver-haired girl in front of him and asked, "Miss, may I know who you are?" That's a question I don't really feel like answering right now. Just know that I can help you leave this place. That's enough." The woman replied, lightly twirling her silver-white hair. "Really, you can help me leave? You're not fooling me, right?" "Really, I have no interest in fooling you." "Then, do you need me to do something? You wouldn't just help me for no reason, right?" Yumo clenched his fists. He didn't think that good things would just fall out of the sky. The other person couldn't have appeared in front of him without reason and claimed to help him leave this space. As it turned out, Yumo's guess was correct. The silver-haired woman smiled and nodded. Helping you leave this closed space is actually quite simple and doesn't require much effort. But well, I do need you to help me with something." "What do you need me to do?" "Play the role of a boss." Boss, what does that mean?" "It means being the villain, the one who causes trouble for the protagonists." A villain boss. Okay, I'll explain it to you." The silver-haired girl looked at the boy and said, "Do you know about the concept of transmigration?" The boy was taken aback. Memories of novels and anime where the protagonist transmigrated to become the villain flooded his mind. Are you asking me to transmigrate into a world of a novel or game and become the final villain? And what kind of ending will it have? A happy one? A game? A novel? No, it's not like that. It's a world without a script. No script. Yes, it's an independent world. You can think of it as a kind of parallel universe. Your job will be to become the final boss and make trouble for the protagonist team to help them grow through challenges. A parallel universe. Who are these protagonists? They're people who, like you, have been brought to this world for a trial. You can think of them as male leads or female leads, hero and heroine. Your goal is to hinder them and make it difficult for them to complete their missions. What missions? If you agree, I'll transfer the details of the mission to your memory. Hearing this, the boy fell into a brief silence. After a moment, he spoke with trepidation. As the final boss, will I die? Will the protagonists eventually kill me? Not necessarily. It depends on how you handle things. If I survive and complete the mission, what happens after that? You can do whatever you want. The silver-haired woman floated in front of the boy, lifting his chin with her index finger, and said playfully, "In any case, this is a deal. If you agree, I'll take you out of here. You'll become the final boss in that world and teach the protagonist's team for me, helping them grow. When it's done, you'll be free. After that, you can do whatever you want and I won't care. Who knows, you might even be able to return to your original world and see your family. It sounds like a good deal for me right now. So what's your decision?" After taking a deep breath, Yumo slowly nodded and said, "I accept. Anyway, for him right now, as long as he can leave this cursed place, it doesn't matter what he does." Upon hearing Yumo's expected answer, the silver-haired girl smiled satisfactorily and said, "Okay, then the contract is established. Oh, by the way, what is it? How do I know who the male and female protagonists are?" Yumo asked curiously. "Those kinds of questions will be in the memories that will be passed to you later. You don't have to worry about it. But since you asked, I'll tell you. When you see the female lead, you will naturally have a feeling." What kind of answer is that? Hearing this answer, Yumo looked confused and his eyebrows twitched slightly. Wasn't this the same as saying nothing at all? However, the silver-haired girl in front of him did not seem to intend to answer Yumo's question. Instead, she absent-mindedly placed her index finger on her lips and said, As for the male lead, that kind of thing has a golden rune mark on their back." Ugh. Yumo didn't know if it was his imagination or not, but he felt like the woman in front of him showed a hint of disdain or even disgust when mentioning the term male lead. Maybe even hatred, huh? Why did she show such disgust when mentioning the male lead? Yumo tilted his head in confusion, but just as he was lost in his imagination, the silver-haired woman seemed to have figured something out and suddenly clasped her hands together in enlightenment. "Oh, speaking of the male and female lead, I just remembered something. I need to take some precautions." At her words, Yumo frowned. "What precautions? What kind of precautions?" Well, since you're also a man, I have to make sure that you won't have any improper thoughts about me. I mean the female lead. I need to make some modifications first." As she spoke, the silver-haired woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and her mischievous gaze gradually moved down to Yumo's lower body. This made Yumo suddenly feel a chill, and a wave of silvery light suddenly gathered on the girl's slender index finger. Modifications, modifications. After noticing the silver-haired girl's gaze, Yumo couldn't help but feel a shiver. He curled up and retreated, looking at the girl in front of him with a vigilant expression. Although it is unclear what the woman means by precautions, Yumo's intuition tells him that he must stop her. Otherwise, he may lose something very important. After hesitating for a moment, the boy couldn't help but shout, "Hey, can I oppose it? I feel like there's nothing good about that." However, Yumo is just an ordinary human, and his rebellion seems meaningless. The silver-haired woman had no intention of answering Yumo's question. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and snapped her fingers. A burst of silver-white light suddenly rippled in the void. After being baptized by the silver light, Yumo suddenly trembled all over, and a long-lost drowsiness suddenly struck his heart, making his consciousness even more blurred, and he entered a shaky state. What is going on? No matter how Yumo resisted, he could not resist this sleepiness. In the end, the boy closed his eyes and fell asleep quietly, while his soul body floated in this dark space. Seeing this, the silver-haired woman smiled slightly and slowly floated to Yumo's face. Her perception began to scan the boy's body continuously. Looking at the sleeping boy, the girl nodded in satisfaction. It's rare to find such a high degree of compatibility. That's good. There's no need to make too many adjustments. Just slightly change the soul wave value, and it should be able to fuse with that seed smoothly. It seemed like she was talking to herself, or maybe communicating remotely with someone else. Then the woman's captivating eyes gradually narrowed, and a pair of unknown golden runes slowly appeared in her eyes. However, sorry, little friend Yumo. To be on the safe side, I still need to make some modifications to your soul. Before the words had finished, a vast amount of golden energy burst out from the girl's body, directly dyeing the dim world around her into golden. The endless energy, under the woman's control, rushed into Yumo's body in an instant. Along with the influx of power, there were also relevant trial tasks prepared by the woman in advance, as well as necessary explanations for controlling power. As the golden light continued to surge, the appearance of Yumo's soul gradually began to undergo some subtle changes. To this, the woman gradually revealed a mischievous smirk. "Well, whatever happens, I hope everything goes smoothly for you, Tilda. Also, don't try to stop the trial, Tilda." After a long time of deep sleep, Yumo gradually regained consciousness due to the strange bird's noise. However, overall, the young man was still in a very confused state, as if he had been hit by a muscular man wearing a bikini like Mount Tai crashing down on him, and his mind was all mush. Ahem. Where am I? Did I just fall asleep? Right, the deal, and that modification. Devil? Wait a minute. Whose voice is this? Is it an owl? With his consciousness at this point, Yumo suddenly became alert. He swept away the confusion in his mind, and his thoughts became incredibly clear in an instant. After clearing his mind, the young man eagerly opened his eyes, and what came into view was a round, bright moon and the beautiful stars filling the sky. There was no doubt about it. This was no longer the eerie void where nothing existed. I left that godforsaken place. In an instant, a wild feeling of joy surged up in his heart. His whole being felt like doing an Armstrong spin and soaring to the sky, as he was so excited. After all, being trapped in that dark and enclosed eerie space for so long, the excitement of regaining his freedom was beyond ordinary people's understanding. Under the frenzy of joy, Yumo instinctively wanted to jump up, cheer, and share his endless joy with this brand new world. Great, I'm free, However, in the next moment, Yumo's mood, which had just reached its peak, plummeted like a roller coaster, and there was a cold lake waiting for him below. From heaven to hell, it happened in an instant. At this moment, Yumo was shocked to find that he could not make a sound, nor could he even move his body. No, strictly speaking, he didn't even have a body right now. Yumo suddenly stood still in shock, looking at his new body with a vacant gaze. What the hell is this? As usual, every time something lucky happens to Yumo, he will soon encounter an unlucky event. Being able to meet the mysterious silver-haired woman and leave that godforsaken prison is undoubtedly a stroke of luck. However, after coming out, Yumo discovered a very serious problem. You see, he has read many novels where the protagonist travels to become the villain, not to mention becoming a demon lord with perfect appearance, strong power, and thousands of harems, or even lower-level beings like bones or slimes who are incapable of speaking. The next level is to become some terrifying monsters that feed on blood and upgrade step by step to become the villain. Yumo has imagined all kinds of villain bosses. However, he never expected that the silver-haired woman arranged such a ridiculous villain role for him. He was not even a living creature, but a strange building-like temple located in the eerie giant forest, unable to speak or move. Feeling the dead silence around him, Yumo's mentality collapsed. If he had hands and feet now, he would probably be jumping with anger. Damn! Are you sure you want me to be the villain boss, not the boss's home? What the hell is this? In anger, Yumo didn't hesitate to give the silver-haired woman the most sincere curse in his heart. However, now that things have come to this, no amount of cursing will help. So he could only silently accept the tragic reality and analyze the memories and tasks given to him by that woman. Like this, with eyes wide open and unable to sleep, time flies, and more than 500 years have passed like that. The terror of abyssal demons is known to all. These terrifying demons have great enmity toward all living beings except their own kind, and will not hesitate to tear them apart. As the birthplace of abyssal demons, the winter forest naturally gathers the largest number of abyssal demons on the entire Ansita continent. Among them are the Abyssal Demon Kings area, which are recognized by all forces on the continent as forbidden areas. However, forbidden areas also have their uses. In order to better punish heinous criminals, many authorities will exile them to the interior of the winter forest and let them fend for themselves. However, these so-called criminals are not always true criminals. And due to the existence of the abyssal demons, most of these people have only one ending, a brutal death, regardless of whether they are guilty or not. Under the gloomy sunshine, a man covered in bruises and wounds, seemingly subjected to brutal abuse, was struggling to navigate through a desolate forest of dead trees. Due to his thin clothing and walking in the snow, the man was shivering all over, and his legs were turning purple from the disgusting frostbite that covered them. However, even with his dire physical condition, the man gritted his teeth and pushed through the intense pain from the cold and wounds, doing his best to run toward his destination. The reason he was pushing himself so hard was simple. Behind him, there was a white figure that seemed like a nightmare. An abyssal demon. Adrian, a man filled with despair, found himself trapped in a desolate winter forest, his dreams of inheriting his family's title shattered. He was meant to lead a life of abundance and success, but his uncle falsely accused him of murder, stripping him of his rightful position and forcing him into exile. Of course, as a determined young man, he refused to give up. He was holding onto a plan for revenge and hoped to gather his old allies after leaving the forest to fight against his uncle. After all, some people had successfully escaped from the winter forest before. If others could do it, why couldn't he? However, before he could even start his plan, it seemed like it was already at risk of falling apart. When the Griffin Knight threw him into the forest, Adrian was horrified to realize that he was being targeted by a bloodthirsty gaze. The stare felt like that of the Grim Reaper, causing his pupils to tremble, his whole body to shudder, and his soul to quake. The fear was so intense that he felt like he was going to vomit up his last meal. Trembling, he turned around only to see that he was being watched by a wolf-shaped abyssal demon. This 6-meter-tall abyssal demon had not yet released its black aura, but the fierce killing intent emanating from its blood-red vertical pupils, coupled with the frightening power fluctuations around it, caused Adrian to lose all desire to fight. His strength was not weak. Being a 4th level, he was definitely a prominent figure among his peers. However, abyssal demons' combat power started at least at the 5th tier. How could a 4th level possibly resist? Moreover, the wolf in front of him was clearly above 5th level. Even his own Knight Commander was probably not able to win against this wolf, let alone himself. When he thought about his revenge plan that had not yet been put into action, he was about to die before he could even start. Adrian's mind was almost collapsing, and fear and despair twisted his face. Accompanied by the bloodstains and black soil on his face, Adrian no longer had the handsome posture of a nobleman, but was as ridiculous as a clown. Run faster. This was the only thought in Adrian's mind, even though his rational mind told him that he could not possibly outrun the abyssal demon behind him, and it was better to lie down and wait for death. But who would be willing to go to death willingly, under the strong influence of survival instinct? Adrian was no exception. The potential he had accumulated in his body for 20 years erupted almost instantly. With the support of his magic power throughout his body, Adrian ran wildly toward the forest. However, the more he ran desperately, the stronger the despair in his heart became. This man who considered himself strong also began to scream like he was going to collapse. The reason was simple. No matter how much he accelerated, under the condition of using all his magic power, he could not shake off the white giant wolf behind him. The distance between the wolf and him was always maintained at about 10 meters, and the terrifying bloody red eyes of the wolf never left Adrian's back. When Adrian fell down, the wolf would thoughtfully stop and wait for him to get up and continue playing running and catching game with him. It was like the wolf was mocking its prey, seemingly waiting for the prey to be exhausted before going up and devouring it. "Oh goddess, what did I do wrong to suffer such torment?" Adrian, who guessed this point, was almost in tears, and his fate seemed to be torn apart by the wolf. When he thought that he, the son of a marquis, would die inexplicably under the claws of a beast, Adrian's heart became even more shattered. Besides continuing the meaningless escape, all that Adrian could do was pray in his heart that the giant wolf could quickly change its target. After all, there was more than just him who was exiled to the cold winter forest to die. "Go eat someone else, don't eat me." "Oh goddess, give me a miracle, I don't want to die. If you let me go back alive, I will build 10 churches for you." This distressed man continued to cry out in his heart and desperately prayed for a miracle. However, this time, did the goddess seem to respond to his request. When Adrian passed through a patch of bushes without choosing a path, he seemed to have entered a special boundary, and everything around him suddenly twisted. The sight in front of him suddenly changed dramatically. What happened? When Adrian opened his eyes again, he was incredibly surprised to find that the surroundings were no longer the same old grim and towering trees, but a dilapidated altar. Or is it a temple? Where am I? Looking at the ancient stone temple standing around him like a towering pillar, looking at the broken throne that had been crushed by boulders on the high platform, and sweeping the incomplete murals full of ancient runes, Adrian was stunned like a wooden chicken, as if he had been struck by thunder, and his mind was hard to calm down for a long time. Where am I? No, where is the demon wolf? Suddenly, Adrian returned to his senses from the shock and looked back in horror. However, he was shocked to find that there was only a clear lake behind him, without a bloodthirsty white giant wolf. Even the terrifying pressure released from the giant wolf that had been oppressing him all the time was gone, like everything before was just an illusion. However, the joy of surviving the catastrophe did not relax Adrian's nerves. He remained tense for a simple reason. The giant wolf had indeed disappeared, but on the other side of the lake. Dozens of pairs of eyes were still staring at him tightly, wanting to look at him like a delicious meal, and all the owners of those eyes were abyssal demons. Seeing this, Adrian couldn't help but take a deep breath. But why didn't they come over? This is not like the character of the abyssal demons. In horror, Adrian also found an incredible thing. That is, although the eyes of these abyssal demons staring at him were terrifying, they seemed to have no intention of crossing the lake to kill him. What's going on? Adrian couldn't help muttering to himself. However, at this moment, a strange, genderless, mechanical-like voice suddenly entered Adrian's mind, making him shudder. Do you want revenge? I can give you strength. Who's there? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.